So, South, I've been thinking,
Oh, yeah?
I want to be cryogenically frozen.
Frozen, huh?
Yeah? The whole
What?
deal, like full body.
Huh. So not just your head, like Walt Disney.
No, full body.
Uh-huh.
But just your head being frozen is cool, too, because you could be a cyborg maybe at that point.
Yeah. Do you
Not
think
bad.
they offer levels, like different tiers? Like you can just have like your brain, then your head,
Yeah.
maybe your upper half.
And then at some point in time, your consciousness can get uploaded. But I don't want my consciousness because I feel like that's just a clone of me. But I want my actual self, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, what's a clone of me going to do? I want me there, you know?
Where do they where do they have these facilities? I mean, have you ever seen one?
Probably in Arizona somewhere, or seems like an Arizona thing.
Oh, okay.
Also, being shot into space wouldn't be too bad either, you know?
Oh,
cryogenically frozen, shot into space.
In space?
Yeah.
But what? The hope that like aliens are going to find you and resurrect you?
Yeah, maybe they could. You know, you shoot off 100 million light years into the distance of the abyss, and then next thing you know, you're brought back to life by some alien race or something.
Yeah, or it could just be like those dogs the Russians sent into space. They're just out there frozen, floating around.
Moment of silence for those dogs.
Yeah.
This is the Economy Lately. I'm Anthony Smith, of course, Chief Economist here at FreightWaves, joined by the one and only South Turk.
Hey now.
The man that makes this all happen. So there has been quite a few economic updates, and we're going to jump into those quickly here on this episode of Economy Lately. One of the big things, of course, that we have to talk about are consumer conditions. So some of the updates from last week and this week, what we've seen are some changes in the job market, kind of. So we saw that there was a tick down in the unemployment rate, which is good news, of course, but when we're looking at the jobs that have been added versus the jobs that have been lost, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So we're looking at some of the jobs that have been added. We're seeing things, of course, in hospitality, restaurant, things like that. Not exactly the higher paying roles. We're looking at the jobs that have been lost. A lot of times we're going to be seeing some of those higher profile jobs, white collar jobs, especially in tech, Silicon Valley type jobs. Not exactly the same thing. Also, one of the other big things that we have to talk about are the initial jobs claims report. The big change here is that there was a historic revision. We were used to seeing sub $200,000 report-ins from this outlook. And so what we've seen lately is that after this revision is now well over,
yeah, like Moby Dick.
Yeah,
Revisionist history a little bit.
I wonder if he's frozen.
Frozen?
Yeah, like the whale.
The whale? No.
Can you freeze whales? Whale flubber?
Well, people eat them, yeah.
They still do that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's always those pro whale activists out there, like pirates fighting the Japanese whaling industry.
Huh.
Yeah.
We need an episode on that.
Yeah. Well,
here
we
let's get to it. Historic changes for initial jobs claims that now claims are showing that they are well over 200,000, now in the 230 to 240,000 range. This is significant, but also not quite at the concerning levels just yet. One of the big concerns comes from continued claims, which are starting to tick up. It's not really too much of a velocity thing or the acceleration of the pace overall, but the overall direction. And we're seeing that there's more and more folks filing continuously for unemployment benefits. And so that's the concerning part there. One more sprinkle of good news is that the participation rate has now kind of started to creep back up to pre-pandemic levels, so that is a good sign. But overall, there's still some shakiness going on in the overall employment market.
Now, who revises this stuff? Is this like revisionist history? Like, that we won World War II, not the Russians?
Government.
Yeah, government.
Government does what it wants.
Yeah.
The other big thing that we have to talk about, of course, is the CPI and the PPI. We're seeing some decelerating trends here, and that is, of course, good signs. But the concerns come from within the reports is that they seem kind of focused around one thing, and that is primarily energy. So we look at the latest report for the CPI, we're seeing that energy overall was a downward movement on a year-over-year basis for 6.4%, 3.5% on a month-to-month basis. And so this is definitely something that is a good sign overall, but it does come on the heels of OPEC Plus announcing that there's likely going to be some increases overall in terms of prices as they start to trim down production. So it could all be short-lived potentially.
How's the CPI in your apartment? You know, the CAT personnel index.
Awful.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a ton of personality, but you got to be into that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Also, what we had last week, consumer credit continues to climb. Surprise, people still using their credit cards. So that is a concern as well. While savings rates are still pretty low and quarterly delinquency rates continue to increase, there's that. Also going to be a little bit concerned around car notes, stuff like that. We'll see what that all kind of shakes out to. We're not done yet. As of this morning, we're going to have updates for retail sales, so be on the watch for that report. We'll get into some of the details for that coming up next week. Speaking of next week, we're also going to have updates around housing starts. We're also going to talk about industrial production, even though overall we are seeing that there is a decelerating trend for manufacturing and overall upstream. That's going to do for this episode of Economy Lately, and we'll see you next week.
now let me ask you real quick though. What is the end goal of this rising credit problem we have? What's the worst case scenario or best case scenario?
Worst case scenario is that people continue to spend more and more on their credit card, even though that inflation is starting to somewhat seem like it's coming down. The other big thing is that the U.S. dollar is getting weaker and weaker, and with weaker U.S. dollar means that imports prices essentially are going to go up. So that's going to be inflationary building. The Fed is going to be backed into a corner potentially to say, hey, you know what, we have to pivot now to kind of save the economy overall so this recession isn't too bad. And then, South, you want to hit this one. The big thing is that they pivot, and then they pivot too soon and inflation starts going back up. Job layoffs happen, and now consumers are going to be exposed to record South, you listening? Record numbers of debt. And now...
Yeah, debt.
Missed that?
Ceiling?
And then the banking financial... Next week, Sal. Next week.